Hi guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today's video is a bit of spring, or rather let's call it fall cleaning. That's right, today I have a rather large book unhaul. To be perfectly honest, I clearly have a bit of a book buying problem, and while I do have a lot of bookshelf space, I'm really trying to be very particular about which books I end up keeping on my shelf. It means getting rid of books that don't really interest me anymore, or getting rid of books that just didn't wow me or I don't see myself rereading. My goal for my home is to have shelves filled with books I can't wait to read or books I have already read and loved. So that being said, I went through my shelves this time around and I really tried to be as brutal as possible, which is very hard for me because I love holding on to every book I've ever received in my entire life. That being said though, I did come away with a decent stack of books that I'm going to be unhauling. My goal also is to use this as a bit of a carrot. I can bring these to a used bookstore, get bookstore credit, buy more books. It's like the circle of life, if you will. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. First set of books I just don't really see myself rereading. The first one is The Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Sue Lin Tan. I'm honestly heartbroken about this, but I can't lie. Every time I look at this book, I am reminded by just how much I was disappointed by it. I loved the cover. I loved the concept of the story. It is a folklore and mythology retelling of the Daughter of the Moon Goddess. It's set in a magical world with all sorts of different mysteries to solve. I wanted to love this book so bad, but ultimately I just found the plot to feel really rushed. I just never felt too connected with the story or the plot progression itself. I am, as I said, so sad I didn't love it. The cover is stunning, and my hope is that someone else will be able to pick this book up and love it like I didn't, because it deserves to be beloved on someone's bookshelf because it is a beauty. Next is an entire trilogy, which honestly makes me very nostalgic. I feel like I've held on to this trilogy for so long because of the nostalgia, and that is the Kiss of Deception series by Mary E. Pearson. I loved this trilogy once upon a time. I even toyed with the idea of rereading it, but there's so many books I want to get to and even reread. I just don't really see myself getting to this anytime soon. This was a moment for me. Like, I loved this series. I think I read this in college, and it was just like one of my favorites, and don't really think I would love it as much if I gave it a reread nowadays, and I'm not sure I want to mess with like the memory I have with this series. And I also feel like another reader could pick up and love the series so much. It is honestly like a solid YA fantasy series. The first one has a really fun setup. It basically follows a runaway princess who runs away from her wedding, and then we alternate between two other male POVs. One is the husband she was supposed to marry, and another is an assassin sent to kill her. She runs into both of them, and we don't know who is who, and she doesn't even realize that she's like under threat. And you kind of go through the story like trying to pick out who she can trust and who she cannot. It's a really clever setup, and the politics of the world really do expand in the later installments. Again, I just don't see myself rereading this, and I want someone else to enjoy this, and I feel like it's time to pass it on, though it's been a fixture on my shelf for so long. Next up, I have finally decided to also part ways with the Crown of Feathers series by Nikki Powell Preto. I have book 1 and I want to say book 3, which is kind of strange. This was another YA fantasy series that I remember really enjoying, but I actually reread book 1 with the intention of carrying on, and unfortunately I was just really disappointed by the narrative, the plot to be much more predictable than I remembered, and just everything just not really singing in the way that I recalled. This is another great concept. It's a YA multi-POV fantasy story following our main character who has a very complicated relationship with her sister, and this aspect of that story I loved. This is set in a fantasy world where there was once powerful warrior queens who had magic, but they have been killed off. They used to ride phoenixes, and two of our main characters are two sisters who are connected to this long lost line of warrior queens, and they are trying to hatch phoenixes for themselves. It also has other characters. It has like a character disguising themselves as a boy to join this academy. It has a lot of fun aspects, but I just really wasn't blown away too much by the story. I just truthfully don't see myself continuing, and I have to be brutal. I have to make space. Books are beautiful, so again, I'm hoping someone else will be able to enjoy them. Next, I have a series that I truly do feel like is so much fun, and that is the My Plain Jane series. Cynthia Han, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows. Honestly, I have nothing negative to say about these books. I'm just trying to make a bit more space, and if I want to continue on with this series, I think I'm just going to pick up the ebooks. They're a lot of fun in terms of YA. They're basically reimaginings of different Jane-oriented stories. One of them, for example, is a retelling of Jane Eyre, and another is like a Wild Wild West tale. They're really fun. The narrative has a bunch of humor, and the authors generally tend to break the fourth wall, which I always found to be really enjoyable. I think these books are a delight, but I'm trying to make space. I really want other people to check these books out because I don't see myself rereading them, but I do really love them and would recommend them. And I have The Night Tiger by Yang-Shi Chu. I really thought this one over because I really love the author's writing, and I have another book by her, The Ghost Bride, which I adore. The Night Tiger I liked. I wouldn't say I enjoyed it as much as The Ghost Bride, and my literary fiction shelf is truly overflowing, so I'm really trying to cut back on things that I just don't see myself picking back up. That being said, like, I love this author's writing. I enjoyed the setting of this, and in general, I did enjoy it, except the romantic aspect of the story, and that is the part that kind of left me with a weird taste in my mouth. So because of that, I'm just gonna pass it on because I look at it and I just feel like a weird mix of emotions, if that makes sense. Next up, I have a beloved YA duology, so I apologize in advance, and that is the These Violent Delights series by Chloe Gong. I read these earlier this year and I liked it, didn't love it. I have a whole reading vlog documenting the process if you're curious. I think the concept of this world really shows that the author has so much potential, but I just found the writing and the plotting to be a little predictable and fell a little flat for me. The Shanghai Romeo and Juliet retelling vibes with a bit of magic was so cool, and the politics that the author commented on were great. I just found the fantasy aspect of this series to be a little underdeveloped and a little repetitive throughout the duology itself. Again, I actually think I'll be checking out other books by this author. I just didn't particularly love this duology personally. And then I have two middle grade books, and that is The Iron Trial and The Copper Gauntlet by Holly Black and Cassandra Clare. I love middle grade. I love a middle grade trial book. I love a middle grade magical school setting, and this does have both. I picked these books up, I want to say in college. It's been so long. I read the first one. I remember not being like totally blown away. I always meant to continue on. I never did. It's been so many years, and I have other middle grade series that are kind of at a higher priority for me right now, and because I've owned this for so long and have not read it, I feel like it's time to pass it along, as I'm sure there are many others that would love to read this. Next is a small stack of duplicate copies. I just simply own more than one of this book, so I don't need to own two, despite what I try to tell myself. The first is Book of Night by Holly Black. Another book I honestly just contemplated selling altogether. I do have two copies of this. I did not love this at all. This is Holly Black's adult fantasy debut, and it just was okay, and I'm still super disappointed by it, but I'm holding out just in case the sequel is better. But otherwise, it's gone and off my shelf. The concept of this is great. It follows our main character who has been trying to get out of the shadowy underworld of shadow magic. In this world, shadows can possess powers, granting some people different abilities. Our main character is a great thief, but again, she's trying to clean up her life, but she's pulled back in for one final heist and things begin to kind of go wrong. It's a great concept. Wasn't great execution. I own two copies. I am getting rid of one. I have a Forgery of Roses by Jessica S. Olsen. Again, I have two copies. I'm still excited to read this book. I just don't need two. And then lastly, for my duplicate copies, I have The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. I actually just read this book and I really enjoyed it, so I am thrilled to have it on my shelf. I just, again, don't need two versions of it. If you're looking for a really fun quest-centered fantasy story centering Jinn magic and ancient artifacts, this is such a good debut to check out. I really liked it. Then the last selection of books are either a combination of books sent to me that I didn't request, so they just don't perfectly match my genre preferences, and then thrillers, because I somehow always end up with an abundance of thrillers, and I generally do not read a lot of them, so I really try to keep it to a reasonable number, and within that, books within that genre I'm most excited about. But first, I have an ARC See You Yesterday. This seems like a really cute YA contemporary story. I just don't read a lot of YA contemporary. Sounds super cute and basically follows a girl who's looking for a fresh start in college, but everything kind of goes wrong right at the beginning. I think this could be really humorous and cute, so I'm sure someone will love it. And I also have Debating Darcy, which is a Pride and Prejudice retelling, which makes it incredibly tempting, but it is another YA contemporary story following two like debate champion rivals from different schools. Sounds adorable, to be quite frank. Then I have Bittersweet by Susan Cain. This is a nonfiction book about sorrow and longing and how that can make us whole. To put it simply, I don't know if reading a book about sadness is like what I personally need for my own mental health. I could be wrong though. Let me know if I'm wrong about that. But this is kind of like a personal choice. Generally, I love nonfiction, and I do want to check out her other book, which is like The Power of Introverts, but I just don't know about like this idea of embracing sadness for me personally. You know, like everyone has their own journey there, and I gotta stay mindful of my own. And I have Maggie Stiefvater's Bravely. This is actually, I think, like a retelling of the story Brave, like the Disney Pixar movie, which sounds cool. I just generally have not read a lot of Maggie Stiefvater in my day. It looks cute, and I'm sure many people would love to have this, but I just don't really see myself getting to this anytime soon. And we have thrillers. Let's just go through these pretty quickly. The first is Breathless by Amy McCulloch. This is about a killer in the mountains. Sounds cold and spooky and too scary for me. Then we have Things We Do in the Dark by Jennifer Hiller. This is about a woman who was arrested for her husband's murder, but did she really do it? Only one way to find out. And The Lies I Tell by Julie Clark. And this is a woman who is a con artist moving from town to town with different names. And one woman has been waiting to expose this other woman like for the past 10 years, and I think it gets really messy. Like a Sister follows a reality TV star who's been found dead and her half-sister searching for truth. Then I have The Paris Apartment by Lucy Fowley. I hummed and hawed about this one because I did actually like Lucy Fowley's other release, but I've just heard really meh things about this particular release, and it is a closed door mystery, which are thrillers I tend to keep because I love a closed door mystery, but the reviews just kind of have put me off a bit, so I've decided to pass this one along. Then we have Leanne Moriarty, who's a very famous like thriller author. She wrote Big Little Lies and all of those things. I just think I will wait for the adaptation because I love a thriller adaptation instead of picking this book up. I just don't see myself fitting it on my TBR anytime soon. So this is my last book I'm going to be unhauling. Alrighty guys, that is my big book unhaul. I'm really trying to stay diligent on making sure my bookshelves have space and are clean for all of my upcoming purchases because there are many. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and I will see you soon with another one soon. Goodbye.